Yeah, my name is Gregory Whyte. I'm going to give you a bit of a background of Ridge and where I've grew up and the life that I shared in Ridge. Where do I actually start? It's actually quite good memories and some learning opportunities that I received and possible challenges that we endured growing up. But it was also fun times and good times that we had growing up as a child in Ridge. I grew up in Ridge in 206E, Mercury Crescent. In Ridge we call it, we divided the sections into F section and ghettos. And grew up with a huge family of uncles and aunties. But I was taken in by my grandmother due to my mom moving out and continuing a life on the other side of the world. I grew up with my grandmother, very strong woman, very powerful and passionate woman. She made certain that I at least have education, especially with the challenges that we had in Ridge. Our childhood growing up was quite challenging. We didn't have today's kind of lifestyle that today's kids have. There wasn't any technology, there wasn't any cell phones, any kinds of Xbox or these latest kinds of technologies that today's kids have. We grew up walking around with no shoes. We had to put out or specific clothes for special occasions. We went to school in Ridge Primary School, and from there I started at standard 1. In fact, actually in sub B, where I attended ballroom classes, and I learned how to do ballroom and various other dancing. I was privileged to be part of a launch of the ballroom within Ridge. Still have a video of it, which is quite interesting. And I've won quite a few competitions doing ballroom as a young lad. Eventually the talent and my life changed, by playing around in Ridge. All that we knew was to play at a certain time and where your grandmother or your parent will call you in early to come and bath and sleep early. Grew up in quite a nice, wonderful Christian home. And my grandmother was a very staunch Christian, starting off church groups at our home, and eventually it went to bigger community halls. Our family background, the Whyte family, came originally from, in fact, the Whytes and the Lawrence came from Rietvlei, Harding and Weza, and from there, during the apartheid era, of the movement of the non-whites, their farm and the land was taken away, and they were placed in various other areas where they had to survive. Moving from Weza or Harding, they moved all the way down to Potchefstroom, and from Potchefstroom they moved to Durban, where they lived in Melbourne Road Flats. Melbourne Road Flats was predominantly that time flats that was put out for coloured, so-called coloureds, and from Melbourne Road Flats they moved to Mayville, and Mayville they ended up in Ridge, where my journey started in Ridge. I come out of a family where we have, from my mom's side, I have 3 sisters, and I was the only boy. My 2 sisters grew up with me, but the last sister, she remained with my mother. Over time, everyone obviously left the home, and I remained in the home. And I was a foster child and grew up with my grandmother. I learned all her traits and all her ways of doing things. She taught me various things, especially when it comes to be independent on your own. Especially gardening, she taught me how to actually grow food and how to clean, and we learned the hard way as we grew up. We lived on my grandmother's pension as well as the foster monies that came in. But that was the sounds of it sad, but however, there's a good part to my life. regardless of all the challenges I've gone through, the interesting thing about it is that I've learned and become someone totally different to what the condition of lifestyle and what marriage had to offer at that time. You either had to decide whether you play a sport or become famous in singing or different kinds of arts and culture. I leaned to one of my, as I say, it's a born talent, which was dancing. My grandfather and my grandmother always used me as some kind of I would say more like a bragging style, and the aunties and uncles of those years, where on special occasions, especially with weddings, I would have to go and perform at weddings. And well, the most important performance that everyone knew was the performance of Michael Jackson. So I studied Michael Jackson through watching the black and white TV and trying to get the moves on Michael Jackson. I tried my best to even dress in that way with a glove. Unfortunately, I didn't have the hair, or the nose, but, I had the moves. And from flat to flat, from 206E, that's where I was, moving to 204 and 202, as well as flat 1, the entire area, all the community, aunties and uncles, all knew me as the performer. So whenever there was a function, whenever there was a party, they would say, go call Auntie Gailey's son, go call Gregory, let him come and do something quickly. They'll play the music. And the first thing was Michael Jackson, either Thriller or, or Who's Bad, but I could move to everything. And I must say it was quite fun, and I was famous at that age. Eventually doing it through primary school, and it remained with me in the family. Over time, I went to go and visit my auntie that took over the flat of my mother in Melbourne Road Flats. Melbourne Road was also a very interesting part of my life, where I met up with quite a few people. I met up with a friend, he's late now today, he was living in Newlands East before he died, Carlo Inderland. Carlo Inderland was, at that time, he was quite famous, and his brother is, in fact, his brother Quakes, or let's call him brother, but it's actually his uncle Quakes. Quakes was, those days, used to dress, wearing all the paisley clothing, all the latest type of shoes, Sebagos, tackies, these people dressed. All their clothing came from overseas, was shipped, because some of the family worked on ships. And Carlo would somehow benefit with the dressing style, and I came there with my dressing style, which was outdated, hustling about, but I met up